Hello and welcome to the Sonicverse project, where we will try and explain the ins and outs of the world as cool and blue as the hedgehog himself. Whether it's deep lore, common misconceptions, timelines, or maps, this will be the hub of discussion for the Sonicverse. These videos cover my interpretations of the Sonic mythos. I don't speak on behalf of other Sonicverse project members, and I try and limit myself to information that we've all agreed upon. Today, we will be investigating the locations that each Sonic game occurs in timeline order. It is important to note that the Sonic series does not have a definitive planet or world map design, and it is usually represented differently between games. Previously, writer for the series Ian Flynn has stated that there is no canon map, so locations can't be placed. Tales Tube Episode 1 shows the Sonic Unleashed planet when referring to Sonic's world, so I will be using that for presentation purposes. Because of how the placements I primarily described in relation to other places, the rationale behind placements would remain the same regardless of the appearance of the world. In-game evidence will be used. For example, if a character is implied to have walked or ran between locations, it can be assumed that the locations are close together. Content within this video is subject to change in future as new information comes to light. With all that said, let's begin. The first game in the franchise and timeline takes place on South Island. In the manual, this location is stated to both house the Chaos Emeralds and move across the sea. While the first point seems to no longer be accurate, it can be assumed that South Island is still able to move. Sonic CD primarily takes place on the Little Planet. Little Planet shows up annually above Never Lake. While the location of this lake has never been officially stated, many fans have dubbed the landmass that the lake sits on as Mirage Island, which would be corroborated in a much later title. Due to the lack of official recognition, I will be using the term Mirage Island when referring to the home of Never Lake. Sonic 2 takes place on Westside Island. While we don't exactly know where in the ocean it is, the Sonic Origins menu places it to the west of the island that CD is represented by, so we will consider it west of Mirage Island. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, alongside Knuckles' story in that game, all take place on Angel Island, which floats above the ground and also moves, so placing it is impossible. We only know of the locations that it has landed throughout the series. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog takes place on Eggman Island. We have no clue where that is. For consistency's sake, let's assume that is relatively close to where all the other classic games are. Sonic Mania takes place across South Island, Westside Island, and Angel Island. It is unknown where Press Garden is though. I may as well bring this up now, but I'm going to consider that the classic IDW comics and Press Garden from Sonic Mania take place on the same landmass as CD and Sonic 4, Mirage Island. In all honesty, this is not based on any tangible evidence, and it's more so my attempt to try and localize the classic games to a small archipelago of islands, as I feel that fits much cleaner and in a more satisfying way. Tackling all of Sonic 4 at once, the map in these games shows us that they, despite their similarity to the zones in Sonic 1 and 2, take place on Mirage Island due to the presence of Never Lake. The variety of familiar-looking biomes that this game shows is what convinces me that stories like Seasons of Chaos could realistically take place on this island. It seems that this is the most likely island that could have a large population of animals based on what we see. Knuckles Chaotix takes place on the ever-iconic Neutrogic High Zone, stated to be in the southern seas of Sonic's world. This trilogy of 8-bit titles all take place on South Island as stated in the game's manuals. Sonic Spinball takes place on Mount Mobius and in Eggman's Vedra Fortress, which the Origins menu map would show us is relatively close to the other classic islands. I will be putting the story Sonic Learns to Drive on Mirage Island for reasons that I'll get into more when we get to the other three classic comics. The courses in Sonic Drift are all South Island locations, so we know that it takes place there. There is heavy debate over the placement of locations from this game, but the Japanese manual suggests that it is on South Island, as with the other Game Gear platformers, except for Robotnik Winter Zone, which is stated to be on a smaller nearby island now covered in frost. The courses in Sonic Drift 2 are primarily West Side Island locations. There are many that aren't, but due to how many there are, it's safe to assume that all the courses, sans Milky Way, take place on West Side Island. Desert Road from this game has the side effect of confirming that there is a desert on West Side, which will come into play later. Tails' adventure, no longer taking place before Tails met Sonic for reasons that I will discuss in a later video, takes place on Coco Island, which is another in the long list of resting places for the Chaos Emeralds, which we can chalk up to being more baseless legends within the Sonic world. The island that Tails' Sky Patrol takes place on is not named, however the manual suggests that it is small. I like putting the classic games close together, so this island will be near the others. Sonic Labyrinth takes place on South Island. Easy. Sonic the Fighters is harder to place due to the variety of locations. South Island and Canyon Cruise are both on South Island. Giant Wing is in the sky, and the Death Egg stages are both in space. Mushroom Hill is on Angel Island. Aurora Icefield is very likely up north in Holoska, or it's the North Island that Bark supposedly comes from. I'm not sure on that one, but let's give the old writers the benefit of the doubt and assume that there is a frosty North Island. Dynamite Plant and Casino Night both take place on West Side, near or part of Royal Ocean and Casino Night respectively. Flying Carpet is a difficult stage to place. I suggest that it is on West Side Island Desert, as we never see a Sonic Sphinx in Sandopolis. Desert Road and Mirage Saloon confirm that West Side Island does feature a desert. Sonic 3D Blast takes place on Flicky Island, which is seen in Sonic Origins to be northish to the other classic islands. As stated in the manual, Sonic Blast takes place on South Island. It is unknown where Sonic R takes place, except for Resort Island, which is clearly on Flicky Island. Regal Ruin is likely near the Mystic Ruins or another ancient echidna site. Some believe it's on Angel Island, which is also a possibility. I am putting Sonic Learns to Drive, Seasons of Chaos, Eggman's Birthday, and Amy's New Hobby on Mirage Island, as the locations in the books are shown to be populated by animal creatures, and Tales Tube Episode 1 confirms that animals primarily inhabit islands. Despite the lack of true evidence for this, I feel like it is tidier this way and stops a bunch of unnecessary islands being made. Flying Off the Rails is stated to be on Flicky Island. The currently upcoming Sonic Superstars takes place on North Star Island, of which we know very little about. Note: while it may be odd that I'm trying to put all the classic games close in proximity to each other where there isn't necessarily evidence to reflect that, it is important to note that, according to Yuji Naka, Sonic had only encountered humans, excluding Eggman, just before the events of Sonic Adventure, meaning that he likely did not go on the major continents, as Tales Tube Number 1 states that humans live there in the countries. It is because of this that I believe the locations of the classic games must have been close to each other to avoid Sonic crossing these countries. There is really nothing indicating where the levels of Sonic Advance might take place, excluding Angel Island, of course. Sonic Adventure takes place in Station Square, the Mystic Ruins, and Angel Island. We know that you can take a train from Station Square to the Mystic Ruins, which are at opposite ends of the railway. This means that any other trains leading from Station Square would have to split off before reaching these locations. Sonic Shuffle takes place in Imaginary World, which is not a real place, so therefore we cannot place it on a map. We see the map of Sonic Adventure 2, which shows Central City, the 2 highway routes, the Radical Highway Bridge, the mountains and a jungle, Prison Island, and a large desert. Something interesting to note is that the desert has echidna architecture, perhaps implying that they had a pretty far-reaching reign. Sonic Advance 2 is a similar case to that of the first game, where we really don't know where the levels take place. It is likely that Sonic Heroes starts near Seaside City, a location from the IDW comics, because of its similar name and the proximity of the Chaotix apartment. For Shadow the Hedgehog, Ian Flynn has said that City Escape and Westopolis are the same city, that being Central City. It can be assumed that the other levels in this game take place in the surrounding forests, jungles, deserts, and mountains similar to or nearby locations seen in SA2. Other locations from this game include those taking place on the Black Comet or in Eggman bases. Important disclaimer for Sonic Battle. Ian Flynn said that, while the broad strokes events of Sonic Battle occurred, almost all of the information from this game should be disregarded, including the directions of each map in relation to each other. So Emerald Town being south of the Holy Summit or west of Central City doesn't matter. However, IDW comics show us that Emerald Town is west or near Central City along the coast. Sonic Advance 3 is another game where we don't know where the stages are. Sunset Hill is likely in or near Green Hill as the soil is identical. Chaos Angel and Alter Emerald is on Angel Island. Sonic Riders is mostly in or around Metal City, which we know is somewhere along the train ride from Station Square and the Mystic Jungle as proven by this Sonic Channel art. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 takes place in the Kingdom of Soliana, an island nation. There is much debate as to where this is. It would make sense being on a northern continent, as it is clearly influenced by European culture like the other locales there. However, it is unusual that Knuckles would be so far north away from Angel Island. IDW Sonic the Hedgehog features a dusty desert, which seems to be the same one seen in SA2, but shares a name with the Solianan location from Sonic 06. This could imply that Central City is very close to Soliana, but I feel we do not have enough evidence to make a decision. Sonic Rivals takes place on Angel Island, though in-game we see the future version, called Onyx Island. Sonic Rush is a huge doozy. It's either near Mystic Ruins because of Tails' workshop, or near Apatos because of the Water Palace resembling its architecture. As of now, I have not been able to make a decision regarding this matter. The locations seen in Sonic and the Secret Rings all take place within a book. We also don't know whose house Sonic is seen at the beginning and end of the game, though it is likely one of Tails' labs. Sonic Rush Adventure takes place in the Soul Dimension. Sonic Rivals 2 starts in Blue Coast Zone, which is very clearly an island in the Apatos region. Characters travel mostly on foot in-game, which makes me believe that the rest of the game should be nearby. Something very interesting that I found is that many of the zones in this game resemble that of Sonic Heroes in a similar order. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity takes place on and around the city of Monopole. Many different interpretations of this one. Some note that Monopole is a similar shape to the island that Adabad is on, and some note that the architecture is similar to that in Middle Eastern cities like Dubai, and place it on the Shamar continent. We don't know where it takes place, however, so I will not be able to make a judgment regarding this. The locations of Sonic Unleashed are really easy to place, as we see on the map where they are, and it's the same map that I've been using for this video. Sonic and the Black Knight takes place within a book. The location in this book is the Kingdom of Avalon. We do not know where Sonic Freeriders takes place, with the exception of Metal City, which is the same one as that from Sonic Riders. Sonic Colors and the short Rise of the Wisps take place across Dr. Eggman's interstellar amusement park, which contains many planets from across the universe. The elevator that Sonic and Tails take to reach this amusement park is between the continents for Missouri and Apatos, as seen in the intro cutscene. Sonic Generations takes place in White Space, an area removed from time, and the characters are able to travel to areas from throughout time thanks to the Time Eater's influence. Note, we don't know exactly when Sonic Prime takes place, so I'll just be putting it here. The show takes place in Green Hill, and the Shadowverse exists solely on Green Hill to our knowledge. Sonic Lost World takes place on the Lost Hex, which seems to float in the sky above Earth. The comic Sonic Force's Moment of Truth takes place in the Ruined City. Sonic Forces Rise of Infinite shows us that the lab scene at the beginning of Sonic Forces is actually within the Eggman Empire Tower. The comic Sonic Forces Stress Test takes place on Angel Island. The comic Sonic Forces Looming Shadow takes place in the desertified Green Hill Zone. Episode Shadow and Sonic Forces are very difficult to talk about, but I will start by listing the facts. The ruined city is on South Island. We know this due to its proximity to Green Hill. While unconfirmed, the similar names between Mystic Jungle and Mystic Ruins Jungle makes me think that they are in similar locations. We know that the chemical plant of this game is not on Westside Island, but is in fact in the frigid north of Earth, meaning that it is very likely near the Holosko continent. The Eggman base that we see at the start of the game is the Eggman Empire Fortress Central Tower as confirmed by Rise of Infinite. We do not know where Metropolis and the Eggman Empire Fortress are, except for that they are near each other. Because Eggman has a lab in the Mystic Jungle and Amy says Infinite was made in the Central Tower, they are likely relatively nearby. Now is a good time to discuss a popular theory surrounding Sonic Forces, is that the locations of the game, excluding Chemical Plant, take place on South Island. Reasons to believe this are that Green Hill is on South Island, the ruined city is close to Green Hill, the ruined city and the Mystic Jungle have the same soil pattern. I think this is likely, but unfortunately we lack the evidence required to truly establish this as fact. Next up is IDW Sonic the Hedgehog issues 1 through 36. Because of how many locations appear in the IDW comics, I will not be commenting on their placement in this video. If there is enough demand, I will cover these in a follow-up video. Team Sonic Racing is interesting, as there are tracks from many different locations. The courses in this game take place across Planet Wisp, Spagonia, Sandopolis on Angel Island, Seaside Hill, Casino Park, and Final Fortress. An original location made for this game, Glacier Land, features lots of Assault-class Death Egg robots and other Eggman technology. The climate, in addition to the Sonic Forces influences, makes me believe that Glacier Land is near the chemical plant of that game, which puts it in the far north. I will be treating IDW Sonic the Hedgehog issue 37 to the current issue the same as the previous ones. Based on the images that we see, it is likely that Tails Tube's episodes 1 through 3 are filmed from Tails' Mystic Ruins lab. Sonic Frontiers prologue Divergence takes place on Angel Island until Knuckles is sent to Ares Island from Sonic Frontiers. Sonic Frontiers prologue Convergence takes place on a beach on the way to the Starfall Islands. Sonic Frontiers takes place on Starfall Islands as said in-game. It would make sense that they are pretty far out into the ocean as they were seemingly undiscovered before the events of the game. Tails Tube Episode 4 and the upcoming Season 2 are the same case as the last batch of episodes being filmed from within Tails' lab in the Mystic Ruins. While not created by Sonic Team, The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog was created in collaboration with the official Sonic Law Committee, which means that the information in the game should be treated as accurate. This game takes place on the Mirage Express, which is a train that runs past Never Lake, strengthening the idea that the landmass is called Mirage Island. And with that, we have now covered the location of each Sonic game. Thanks for listening, and please let me know which topic you'd like for me to discuss next.